We are recording. Today I am here with Joe. He is a very interesting individual in terms of what he does. Do you want to talk a little bit about what kind of coding you do?
So, day job, I do a lot of microcode, which is very specific to a given software, or not software, a given piece of hardware, right? So every CPU that runs a program, right? An Intel thing, Intel has microcode baked into their processors, and that handles, here's what this piece of hardware does for a given input and handles all of that. So I do that kind of code writing, which is very much triggering bits on and off, that kind of thing, and is very detail oriented, very tricky to map out. But ultimately, it's still broadly the same process. You're still doing procedural stuff. You're still doing do this thing, then do that thing, then do that thing. It's just at a much lower level, at a much more hands-on level, even because where you have assembly, right? Assembly is like, I want to do load a thing.
Right.
I want to load X number into Y register. Well, microcode breaks that down even more into, what bits do I need to set so that the electrons, the magic rock electricity goes the directions it needs to go to actually do what you said you want to do. You know, assembly is potentially multiple clock cycles. You can do an assembly instruction that'll take 3 clock cycles or whatever, right? But microcode is like, what am I doing on this clock to make sure that the next clock is set up in the way that I want, and so on until you want to perish from this earth.
Yeah. So I remember you helping me through like one microcode task, one time, and that was enough for me to say, "Damn, this guy's got another type of level thinking." Because like coding in, I'd say what we code in is pretty comparable to C, right?
Yeah,
very type oriented, procedural. You gotta be very strict with what you're trying. Yep, you gotta make sure your code compiles always. But it's like, I find it just very interesting because like college, which I'm sure you didn't do microcode in college, did you?
Yeah, the lowest we got was a digital logic course, which digital logic is just
diagram.
It's AND gates, OR gates, XOR gates, broad binary stuff, which is very helpful for this. But then that plus assembly, which was, I think we just did MIPS. I think most colleges probably do MIPS.
Yeah.
Because it's relatively simple and it's not a insane set of nonsense like x86, which Intel uses, or I guess Intel and AMD use.
Have you learned any x86?
Not in a way that I would say that yes. I've looked at it and being like, I'm good. Like, it's one of those things where you need a good reason to want to learn that kind of stuff, because it is not designed for anything other than compiler writers to know the details behind that stuff. And compilers are smarter than you 99% of the time. So in a lot of cases, it's one of those things where like you hear the story about the guy who wrote Roller Coaster Tycoon in assembly.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, yeah, in the 90s, sure, that was probably worthwhile. But at this point, if you try to write anything yourself in assembly, I feel like it would be almost objectively worse than just letting a compiler do it, because compilers are so much better than most people. And the only time you need to care about what the compiler is doing is if you are like hyper optimizing something, which almost no one ever is. So it's one of those things where assembly isn't as useful as it probably used to be, but having an understanding
of what's going on under the hood.
Yeah, like the baseline of what assembly teaches you in terms of what is a CPU actually doing, right? What is your human readable-ish code turning into, so that a dumb rock with electricity being pumped through it can actually do something with it? And because computers don't know, quote unquote, anything, right? So that's having those extra layers down shows you, well, all the levels of abstraction you're working on at all times, but also kind of gives you a bit more insight into why things kind of end up working the way that they do.
Yeah, I think assembly, though, in college, like I just wanted to just blow my brains out trying to take that class, because we also so I went to Iowa State. They also made us do a single cycle processor as well as multi-cycle processor. So you're in VHDL setting up the registers, the decoder, encoder.
Gosh, I think I took that class. I went to Iowa State too. What class was that?
That was 381 for CPRE.
That sounds familiar. I think that is the digital logic class, right? Where you are using an FPGA. I definitely took a digital logic, some sort of course where we had an FPGA, and there was like a final project where you had to use an FPGA. Maybe that was a different class, but I definitely did that kind of stuff.
I think that was 281.
That might have been 281.
Yeah.
I may have not done 381 because that was like a CPRE track and I was more of a CS track. Yeah. So maybe I didn't do that, but that sounds about right. Cause it's very, so it had like pipelining in it.
Yes. For the multi-cycle, which was really difficult to figure out. And also we had to write bubble sort in assembly to feed through this and run it against test cases.
Oh, wow. That sounds good. That sounds great.
No, I did not enjoy that. Dude, I wouldn't get out of the lab till like midnight and my shit still wouldn't work. And I just cry on the drive home.
Oh yeah. Like in college, it would be awful. Like, I'm not going to say that. Right now, that sounds great. That sounds just like, oh, that's kind of like a fun little thing that you could do if you didn't have to get graded for it. And it's like, oh, here's me making a little processor here on a board and making a thing do it. But yeah, I agree. That would probably suck a lot.
Yeah, having to create the barrel shifter and the ALU. You're making everything in this processor. You're hooking it up. Good.
And I mean that's pretty similar to what I work with is those. I didn't have to design it. I just have to know how to use it.
Right. But you know how to use the ins and outs.
It's the same idea, right? Like I'm working with an ALU. I'm saying, okay, here's the A side and B side. Here's the operation I want to do. Let's make sure I have the data in the right place it needs to be. One clock cycle, next clock cycle, the output is available, blah, 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 blah. So, that sounds great. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. How long you been working with Microcode?
Oh gosh, I think it was 2020.
So because
it was in the middle of the pandemic. Yeah, like I got moved to that team, to our current team. Well, no, actually, it wasn't our current team. Gosh, I don't even remember now.
A team.
It was. It was 2020. It was summer of 2020 because I remember that. And because then I had to start going into work during the pandemic, which was great. It was a lot of fun doing that because everyone was still
work from home.
Like, I mean, we tried to get as much stuff work from home as possible, but the stuff we do, we had to go in. We had to mask up and go in, right? Like it was kind of, it was what it was.
Yep.
But that's when I started. I didn't know that's what I would be doing. I got kind of bamboozled. But gosh, I started off pretty slow because it wasn't super. I was at the level of familiarity where I wasn't even sure what they were even asking me to do. Right? Like it was like, we want you to help us kind of reduce risk, do some stuff over here that is helpful and will help us do the rest of the work that we need to do. And I don't think they really had a firm grasp on exactly what I was needing to do, because it started off with just by saying, go read this documentation for a week. And I was like, oh, okay. But like reading documentation without something to apply it to is kind of meaningless, in my opinion. Like,
I agree.
You only learn something by actually trying to work with a problem and trying to solve it. Yep. And otherwise, it's just all garbage. It's just all things that will just immediately leave your brain as soon as you're not looking at it. And I mean, that's still 90% of programming is having reference material that you can look at every time. I Google how to do anything in Python like every single time I touch it. Like, I don't use Python enough to just know stuff. I just kind of be, oh, right. How do you read a file in Python? I always freaking forget. So that was a lot of that, where it's just like, and the thing they wanted me to solve was incredibly complicated. Like, the existing implementation was so complex and written by someone who understood the microcode so much more than I did that it became kind of just I want to say, I don't think I did anything useful for like 6 months.
Wow.
Like, way longer than I would have liked for that anyone would have liked. I think it probably took me 6 months to get like an actual output of a thing that was actually useful.
Desirable.
That they wanted me to do.
Yeah.
And the issue was that, like, even now, if I had to tackle that problem again as I am now, it would still be like, that's going to be hard. That's going to be really tricky and not well understood, because there's still a lot of that stuff out there. So I think ideally that would not be the case for everyone who learns it, but depending on how complex the thing you're learning is, because that's the thing with microcode, is that it's necessarily extremely specific to whatever piece of silicon you're doing it on, right? Like, that's the whole point. But I would hope that anyone else who learns it after me would not take 6 months to write anything meaningful on their own, or relatively on their own. Yeah.
Like, I would say, I don't know. If I were to guess, like, if I kept going on the path that they're trying to get me to go on there for that little splurge, it'd be, I don't know how long it'd take for me to feel comfortable where you wouldn't have me on a leash looking, basically shoulder surfing me at my desk. I don't know, maybe 3 months, 2 months?
Probably, yeah. At least, yeah, I would say 3 for sure. And that would be like you are doing, 80% of your work with it on a given day. And I mean, it's still something that takes a lot of time, because in a lot of cases, you just have to map out data flow. Like, a lot of programming languages, you can kind of just like feel out the control flow of everything and just kind of like type it out as you think about it. And then you're like, oh, maybe I'll go back and do this X other thing up here, and I can easily do that and it'll all work out. But with microcode, you have to pretty much bring up an Excel spreadsheet of every single input and output of all of your various blocks and just churn through clock cycle by clock cycle to plan out where all the data needs to be at a given time. Because, I mean, you can make microcode that is not pipelined, that can just be like, you take a piece of data, then you output it to the next thing, then you output it to the next thing. It'll take forever to do anything, but you could do it. But like, that's not what anyone wants, right? So you have to really plan it out. And then as soon as you have to add anything in the middle of it, you are just like, well, I have to completely figure out how I'm going to shift all this data around, right?
Right.
So it's one of those things where the problems can easily 2x themselves, 3x themselves on complexity as soon as you run into anything you weren't expecting. So yeah, it's an interesting challenge, to be sure. And the thing I'm working with is really not even that complicated in terms of microcode. In terms of what a piece of hardware can have as microcode, right? Like, this isn't a GPU. This isn't, I'm not working at Nvidia here coding up the die on a, whatever, a 4090. Like, this is like, those things are probably way more complex than anything I touch. And it's still not easy. Right. So I understand my place, I guess is what I'll say. It's not easy, and I understand that, but also it could be it could be a lot worse.
Yeah. You ever see those memes of like where like these group of people in a room are having fun, that one person walks in the room and everyone's like, what the fuck? What are they doing there? I feel like that's like Python, Java, C++ looking at assembly.
Yeah.
And then an even scarier person walks in, microcode.
Yeah.
I feel like that's how I react to
I mean,
microcode.
Yeah, that's like a layer above, that's like a level above, well, making a breadboard of a CPU.
Right.
And then a layer below that would be, manually twiddling bits with a magnet in a steady hand, right? Like, we're not many layers above what I consider also to be wizardry. You know, there's always people who are doing way more complicated things than you are, who have made a thing that you just interface with and don't look at. You don't look too closely at. So
yeah, like the people that do the hardware for us, I'm just like, how?
I mean, it's one of those things where like I conceptually get it, but like how you plan that out, like how you design something, like a piece of hardware that complex, I don't even know where I would start, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you design a thing to do this particular problem? I don't know what the most effective thing is. I know what an XOR gate is. Does that help? I don't know.
I know those. Did they ever have you draw out in digital logic like those just bit tables? Like, oh, if I put X and Y to 0, 1, whatever.
Yeah, truth tables.
Yeah, truth tables. That's what they're called. Yeah. See, you remember digital logic more than I do, just because you probably work with. Yeah. You probably
because I mean that's what Microcode essentially is doing. It's saying, oh, okay, we have a block. It's going to XOR these two signals together. Oh, here, well, put it another way. Muxes, multiplexers.
Yep.
Where you can have one bit feed in and it will pass through one of X number of options, power of 2 options. And that's essentially what Microcode is doing, is just saying, I'm setting all of these muxes to a particular value for a clock cycle. So then when you clock everything, all of the data will be shoved through in a particular way such that the output you get on the other side that gets latched into registers and everything are there for the following clock cycle. And you just do that over and over and over again. That's basically what Microcode is doing, is you planning out, here's all the little bits that I need to flip for every single clock cycle so that when you pulse data through everything by using the clock generator, it will all do all of the operations you want it to do, get stored into registers, and then now will be available for the next clock cycle. And you just plan that out, right? So that's digital logic is probably the closest thing you would get to it, right? That digital logic is very close to what Microcode is in practice, outside of, designing FPGA stuff, right? Like outside of programming an FPGA with whatever bullshit you want to do with it.
Right. Yeah, I think one of the most impressive people I met at Iowa State was one of the professors. So he had like 6 internships with Intel, and then he also worked as co-op during his master's at NASA Jet Propulsion Labs to go work on dynamic FPGA programming to counteract the effects of radioactivity when you launch what would be like a Mars rover in space. I'm like, that's insane. I don't know if this is a classified term. I might have to cut this. But would that be like SecDead?
That would be...
Is that classified? Do I need to cut that?
SecDead is...
Single error
correction.
Yep.
Double error detection.
Yep.
That's just a term that means... that's just like a general signal processing term, right? Like that's just the idea that of a given... If you're transmitting a signal, you want to have the mechanism in place that you can detect if a bit was flipped in such a way that if there was a single error, you can immediately correct it and then fix it. But if it's more than that or double error, you can at least say, hey, that was bad. Like that's just broadly how a lot of signal processing, networking, that kind of, it's just a concept specific to just like checking that data in transit wasn't corrupted in a way that corrupted or modified, whatever it happens to be. Yeah. That you can at least say, oh, that was bad. Right. So, I mean, it's definitely not novel. It's not interesting.
Gotcha. To me,
interesting, quote unquote.
Yeah. I guess to me that more on if you look at on a networking side or I don't know, any message related processing, like a cyclic redundancy check, but for signals, I guess. Yeah. I guess that'd be how I look at SecDead. But you can't correct. You can just say, oh, this isn't great.
Yeah, CRCs are just trying to say this thing is not what I expected it to do. You're just you're doing a checksum, right? But like you can just constantly do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of stuff is also pretty interesting. Just like how mathematically and how logically that kind of stuff can even work, right? I mean, it's similar to RAID, like hardware RAID, like for hard drives and stuff. Right.
I thought you were talking about Shadow Legends.
No. You're not sponsored, I assume.
No.
So, I am not. So yeah, we have to cut that out. We can't give them free advertisement.
Cut that out.
Yeah. No. So like RAID for hard drives is kind of the same idea, right? Depending on the RAID you're kind of doing, you have like parity bits where you can like say, oh, if over this chunk of data, you have parity bits that are tracking what the state should be. And if it's not, you can even correct it. But if you have multiple bits wrong, then it's just like, well, it's just bad. So you have to, it's corrupt. It's whatever. Right.
Yep.
So it's a pretty common idea, at least conceptually.
Yeah. That is interesting. But I guess given the fact knowing what you do, does your family like pretty conceptually understand like how smart you got to be for like doing what you do? And do they ask you like for any dumb tech help? Like,
I mean, well, those are two separate questions. The latter is yes, definitely. My brother, so I built my first computer when I was probably like, I don't know, 15. It was a while ago.
I feel like nowadays that's pretty standard.
Yeah, I would say, TikTok, you can look that up, and there's plenty of stuff like that, you got a phone, you can figure that out.
Yeah.
But then my brother at the time didn't care. He cared starting a couple of years ago, so I had to help him a lot with building a computer and making sure. And he still sometimes calls me. He's like, "Oh, this weird thing is happening." I'm like, "Oh, it's probably X, Y, or Z." My sister definitely not. But then, and I mean, gosh, I don't know if I want to say like I'm like first generation, like college educated, because my parents I think had some sort of, I don't know, post high school, I guess,
like
is
maybe
the
an
term.
associate's degree or some kind of
maybe they have some associate's thing. But like me and my siblings were the first people who were like we all went to Iowa State and like got degrees in various things. Like my brother, like he works here in Cedar Rapids, and he does. I mean, he does different things than me, but he's still like very technically minded. Like he got an aerospace degree.
Oh, good for him.
And all that stuff. So like but he's not computer focused. So yes, I become bona fide tech support about most of the time, I would say. And I also try to make sure that anything I tell my parents to get is something that they cannot screw up, so that they don't bug me about. Like it's like that thing of like, you should give your parents like a Linux machine, because those are so easy and like to figure out, and like those are like so like simple and it'll be great. It's like, no, because as soon as anything goes wrong, my ass is on the hook if something breaks, and I'm not gonna do that. And I'll just give them a Windows PC, or even better, like if they can get a Mac, go get a Mac, and then that will just work for you forever, because
it's very hard to mess up a Mac.
Yeah, and I mean, that's not even anything bad against Mac. I have a MacBook and it's great. But like, they don't like, it's hard to mess them up. It's like it's a Unix machine, but like not as open as Linux, for better or worse. So
yeah, I like it because just, I don't know, I have an iPhone. The ecosystem's super nice. Mm-hmm. I can even use my iPhone as a separate web camera.
The cameras are like crazy.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, a lot of people trash on Apple just because X, Y, and Z. They're like,
they're overpriced. But.
They're extremely overpriced, and don't get me started on them trying to sell a monitor stand for like $500.
Oh yeah, but what about those wheels on the Mac Pro, dude?
Yeah, on the Mac server or desktop station, whatever you want to call it. That thing looks like a weapon.
Oh yeah, it's great. What about the trash can? The trash can Mac Pros, those are great. Everyone takes those very seriously.
Yeah, it's funny to see how they price things, but honestly, I don't know. Their products to me are at least justifiable to about 75-80% what they're asking for.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you have a 128 gig RAM upgrade that costs like $200, it's like, what are you doing, dude? Well, not RAM, storage, like on iPhones. So like flash storage. It's like 128 gigs of like storage that isn't RAM. That is like just normal, just normal, like just NVMe SSD storage.
Yep.
It's just like, well, no, that's not $200. It's like $100 at most. Like, you can buy like a 2 terabyte NVMe drive for like $100. Like, what are you doing? But anyway,
that's their wheelhouse.
Anyway, their hardware is good. I really actually do like the Apple Silicon. Like, it's actually pretty good. I was surprised how good it was.
Their in-house chips are pretty
overpriced, but good.
Overpriced, but honestly,
just don't look at the sticker, and then you'll be fine. Or just close your eyes when you click the buy button. Don't look at your bank account, and just send it.
Just
and
move
you'll be
on.
Fine.
Yeah,
you'll be fine.
Yeah, I think something you told me that you bought recently or semi-recently, 4090.
Yes.
What was the splurge in that? Give me the leading up trailing thoughts.
Okay. So I had an AMD card because I was like, well, I don't care about ray tracing that much. But then I was like, well, okay. AMD drivers were kind of crapping out on me. They were just like randomly crashing, right? Like you have an entire... Because the way their drivers... So how AMD tends to crash is your screen just goes completely black. Like the whole GPU driver crashes, comes back up, gives you an error screen, and then all of your apps probably reloaded because they suddenly lost an instance, a rendering instance, and just closed because they didn't know what the hell to do. Like Discord closes because it's like, well, I can't render anything. I guess we'll turn off. And that's annoying. And it's usually just like completely random. It's usually with games, right? Like you're playing a game and the GPU driver crashes. Well, now your game is going to crash because it lost an instance of whatever it was using to render. All of your other programs are crashing. And then now it's like, well, I don't even know what caused that. Secondly, I have a G-Sync monitor, and AMD's interactions with this particular G-Sync monitor, which is like a proper G-Sync with a little chip in it, not like a FreeSync compatible, whatever they call it. That was acting super weird on AMD. And ultimately, I was like, I do kind of really like 4K high-end stuff because I usually play on my TV, which is a 4K TV. And I was like, well, I mean, if I want to play everything at 4K, and I think ray tracing is super interesting and cool when it exists and is there, I would just be like, well, I mean, I can afford it. And I don't spend much on anything else. It's one of those things where, like, is it objectively a good investment? No. But I like it. So I wanted to do it, and I don't spend a lot of money on anything other than tech like that. So it's like, I mean, I don't have a big house. I have a newer car, but like I bought it like 3 years ago or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not buying a bunch of, I don't have an expensive lifestyle, I guess is what I'll say.
Very modest.
So like I was like, I mean, should it cost $1,800 for me to buy this?
Which is cheap for what you can find them for, really.
Well, I mean, MSRP is $1,600, right?
Right, but like you can find some.
When I got them, I initially bought it like maybe a couple months ago or a couple months after they locked down exporting to China on it, and so a lot of the prices went up on it because they were trying to buy them out really fast.
Yeah.
But it was still like $1,800, which was like still more than I really should have paid. But relatedly, I also still have my 7900 XTX, which is the highest end AMD GPU that I had prior to that, and that was still like $800 less. It was still like $1,100 or something, or like $1,000 when I bought it, and that was a while ago. So now, but yeah, ultimately AMD was like having weird interactions with what I was doing, and I was like, I don't know why I should just put up with this, because initially I bought it because I was using mostly Linux, but then I started using HDR more in games, which HDR, if you have an HDR TV, it's kind of crazy. Does your monitor support HDR?
Which one?
The big one. The one that is the size of a child.
I think it's bigger than a child. So for reference, since there's no video that I can just pan over to here, I have a G9 or C9 Odyssey 49-inch 31:9 aspect ratio, and that thing is kick-ass. Iman, if you listen to this, I hate you for baiting me into buying it, but that thing's kick-ass. Yeah, the problem is when he lived here in Cedar Rapids, is he'd be like, "You want to go to Best Buy?" And I'm like, I'm not going to say no. Because he lived really right down the street from me.
Yeah.
And we go out and do stuff, whatever. And we always end up at Best Buy. So like that racing simulator setup.
Never go into Best Buy unless you are already certain of what you're going to buy. And you just go in and go out.
Yeah. It's not good going into Best Buy. Especially when you, not saying I have a lot of fun money, but you know, you rack it up a couple months and you're like, wow, I could spend $1,000 and not hate myself.
Yeah, and still be able to pay my bills. Great.
Yeah. You know, it's like that.
Coming out of college, that becomes very tempting. It's like, wow, I'm not living paycheck to paycheck anymore.
Yeah,
wow, look at that. Wow.
I'm not living off of unseasoned ramen. Like, it's nice to be able to actually eat real food and not just have the shits 24/7 because you can't actually eat good food for your body in college.
My.
Do you have that problem too? You just couldn't afford real food. I mean,
I still got real food. Okay, real food, quote unquote. It was cheap food, but yes, it was. I definitely. I think. I mean, very early on, I moved out of dorms and into a different apartment with my own food. So, in terms of loan usage, it was fine. But yes, I was not exactly splurging.
You weren't splurging. You weren't making dumb financial decisions.
Generally, no. I was trying to avoid it.
Yeah. It can be hard, dude. It can really be hard.
So, yeah, if you have a G9, it should have HDR 1000. So, HDR is pretty cool if you can do it, which is not supported on Linux, which is going back to that. That's why I swapped back to Windows for gaming on everything, because I realized, well, why am I on Linux if I only ever really use gaming? I prefer Linux as an operating system, but like if I'm only ever gaming on it, then why like intentionally limit myself, even though like, yeah, I don't really like Windows, but whatever, they have all the gaming stuff on it and it all works, so
it's the most compatible.
So yeah, now I'm at the point where it's like my gaming PC will be hooked up to my TV and exclusively used for that, and then whenever I have enough leftover parts to cobble together a secondary PC that's like Linux only for other stuff, then that's what I'll do. But HDR, if your monitor supports it, makes stuff really good, because Windows 11 also has like auto HDR, it has window HDR calibration stuff to make it actually look good, because Windows 10 earlier, had pretty bad HDR implementation that it made it kind of look crappy.
Yeah, but I think I have Windows 10 right now, just because. I don't know. Windows 10 to me is great.
Windows 11 is basically just Windows 10.
I know you can open up a Linux shell on, or a Linux terminal on Windows 11.
Yeah,
which is really nice.
Yeah, and I mean, they even have like an Xorg windowing system pass through, so you can even like render windows that were supposed to be rendered in Linux, and like it will pass through to Windows proper. It's pretty good, but also like I just prefer, from like a privacy and customization perspective, if I can use Linux most of the time, I would rather. But
yes,
at the end of the day, most of my spare time on computers are for games and not for anything product. Like, we don't work from home. We don't really, at least not on our own machines. I don't do any coding stuff on my own free time that often. I have spurts. I have things where I'm like, I'm motivated, I'm going to do something, but it lasts for like maybe a month and I'm like, well, no.
You're like, I'm done.
Yeah, I'm over it. It's too much work.
That's my problem. Like, I had this app idea I wanted to really do recently, and one of my buddies came up from Des Moines, and I really feel bad about this, but I'm like, I need to stay busy because, like, over that winter break we had, like, I just wanted to, like, claw my eyes out. I'm like, I was playing video games, like, every day for, like, 8 to 10 to 12 hours.
Mood, yeah.
And I'm just like, this is soul draining, dude. Like, and that's just my, like, that's why I got, like, this podcast equipment and stuff and everything. I'm like, I got to do something productive. I got to give myself something I can work on.
I mean, you got a set of musical instruments over there,
dude,
my guy.
I know that big ass bass. It's a 6-string bass. It almost looks like a guitar, but the natural wood looking one.
That's really good.
I finished my task. That would have been nice to have done before break, but wasn't necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished it. I'm like, I deserve a reward. What do? I go buy a $750 bass.
Only $750?
Yeah,
it looks nicer than 750, but maybe I'm not much of a connoisseur when it comes to like guitars. I've historically more of a drumming percussion boy myself, but
yeah. Do you play drums?
Not recently, just because living in an apartment becomes difficult.
Yeah.
And I have 2 cats who will absolutely chew the hell out of an electric drum set cable. So that's the main reason I haven't got a splurge on an electric drum set is like that in space. I don't have a ton of space to put it. But bass is one of those things where I'm like, I could tackle bass. The bass is pretty good. I appreciate some good bass. You know, I listen to a lot of Wolfpack. You know, I get it. I'm down with the bass.
He's down with it.
Oh, always. So like, but also it's just one of those things like, I'm gonna have to buy one. I'll have to buy like a relatively nice one, like at least $200-$300 if I don't want to hate myself, right?
Yeah.
Because if you use a shitty instrument to learn, you're just gonna be annoyed every time you use it because it gets detuned every time you play it and all that crap. But it's one of those things where it's on my list of giant things that like theoretically I would be into learning if I have the motivation, which everyone has, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like that's me. I told myself I'm going to learn Swift. I'm going to learn Docker. I'm going to learn Kubernetes. Have I? No.
I mean, I know enough Docker that I have a NAS that I use just from like old gaming parts to run like a Plex server. And I use Unraid, which has built-in like Docker stuff. That I know enough Docker to say like, I can spin up a Docker container that will run Plex, and now I can use Plex to, host all my music. So then instead of having to use a Spotify, which I don't use, I'm one of 3 people on the planet who don't use Spotify.
I don't use Spotify.
Well, God bless.
4.
God bless.
I use I still stream, just not Spotify. I use Tidal. Which is higher fidelity music.
Yeah. Do they still... Has Tidal reached the point where it's pretty much any music would be on it? Okay.
Yeah. They got Wolfpack.
I mean, I'm sure they do. I remember initially it was like very selective, but now I'm sure it's probably better. But what I do is I stop doing streaming services if I can. Well, for at least artists that I care about and like enjoy. I just buy the music, right? I just buy it off Bandcamp or whatever. If I can.
That's a rare statement.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's the thing. It's like first of all, I'm an album Andy. I listen to albums. I don't really do single tracks, right? I say I feel like listening to this album, and I just listen to the whole thing, right? Which there's a split. Either you are like that sounds insane, or you're like, yeah, totally get it, because a lot of people tend to make playlists, right? Playlists I don't do. I just don't make playlists.
That's a hot take. That's a really hot take.
Playlists to me are just like, I don't want to like, I get why playlists exist and I understand it and I feel it, but like, I'm very much an album experience kind of person. I was like, I just want to listen to this particular album. I want this Corey Wong album. I'm just going to listen to the entire thing. I'm at work. I'm going to listen to the entire album. And if I feel like listening to it again, I'll do that. Otherwise I'll go to something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in that case, for me, it's like, I'll just take all of these albums I like, I'll buy them or attain them through other means. And then I will put them on my Plex server. And then there's Plex Amp, which is, okay, let me give you the sell here.
All right.
So there's Plex Pass, which is like their paid thing, right? You can pay monthly for it, or you can just buy like a lifetime thing. I think they still do lifetime. And then what you can do, actually, I don't even think that's the case anymore. I think you can use Plex Amp if you don't have Plex Pass. You can use it if you don't pay for Plex. Plex's premium whatever garbage that they have. And Plex Amp is like a really good like music player that says, hey, you have your Plex server wherever you have it. You know, it's just a normal file hosting, so I'll just drag all my music into folders, and then it'll detect everything with like metadata, right? Like it'll just detect everything, and I can listen to it at work because it exposes your local IP through their own IP rerouting, port opening nonsense that they do. So I can just like log into my account anywhere and just listen to it, or use the Plex Amp like app, and it will, if I'm on Wi-Fi, will give me like full quality if I tell it to. And it will also transcode it to lower bit rates if I'm like on cell data or whatever. And then I can just put whatever I want on it, even if it's not stuff that's on streaming services. Because there's a lot of stuff I listen to that aren't on streaming services, right? Like some game soundtracks aren't on streaming services immediately, right? Or stuff like that. So I would say do that, but also I'm a freak. So I do not want to say that streaming doesn't make sense. I guess is what I would say.
It's the path of least resistance.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's why I have YouTube Premium, because I also watch a lot of YouTube, and then it just comes with YouTube Music for free. So if I want to stream something, I can.
Yeah.
But I don't explicitly pay for Spotify or Tidal or whatever, because it's like, well, if I want to listen to something just like that I don't have, and I can just immediately listen to it, oh yeah, I'll just go YouTube Music or whatever crap they'll call it next year. Or I'll just get it. I'll buy it on Bandcamp or whatever means that they allowed me to buy their music through. Because I try to do that, because Spotify pays artists like crap. They pay them nothing. So I have the money to buy the handful of albums I tend to buy. Yeah. So I'd rather just do that, right?
Yeah, to put Spotify payments into perspective, even after, not to get political, but during Trump's presidency, they passed the Modernization of Music Act, which I have a lot of musician friends that post on Spotify, so that's even how I learned about it. And it helped them get more royalties through streaming services. But even after that, so I have these other friends that made a band after this, and they have about 15,000 streams on Spotify, and they've made about $84.
Oh, yeah.
Which is insane.
You get like, to say you get pennies would be overselling it, right? Like, pennies per play would be astronomical. You don't even get pennies. You get sub-fractions of a penny per play, right? And it's garbage. And like, I concede that streaming services as a whole are just like convenient and, free market hypothesis, all that bullshit, whatever. Figure it out. I don't hold anyone personally responsible for the market conditions of streaming services if they decide to use Spotify. Like, who cares? Whatever. Live your life. There's more important things to worry about. But I have the means and find it important enough to do, so I do it.
Yeah, good on you.
It is what it is, right?
Yeah. I do the exact same thing, like when I go to concerts. So like me and my buddies will go to concerts a lot, and like even this band in Des Moines, they were out in the parking lot after the show selling CDs. Like, like back in the old days.
because Ticketmaster is ass.
We don't even use Ticketmaster for the shows I go to.
Oh, they don't even have that.
I go through, like, it's these venues individually selling tickets.
Oh, sure.
So it'd be like 4 or 5 bands for like $15-$20, which is awesome. Very kind
of like not like a festival, but like you have X number of bands in a given night. You just buy the whole thing and you just hang out for that. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, for those that don't know, I listen to metal a lot, and metal is and nowadays, niche genre. To the point where even people that are touring across North America can only get $30, $40, $50 a ticket.
Oh, yeah.
Which is insane. Like, I mean, Taylor Swift, people are paying over $1,000, $2,000 for the nosebleeds.
Yeah. Metal, hey, the metal heyday has passed, right? Like
Yes.
it's no longer like metal is not mainstream in a profound way.
Unless you're Slipknot or some,
Which is honestly just like carryover, right? They just have momentum. So that's why that happens, right? But like, yeah, I get it. Like, I mean, I used to listen to metal and I don't really anymore. So like I'm a living example of how that happens, right? It's like I listened to it a lot when I was younger, and now I just don't anymore. Not for any particular reason. It's not that I don't like it. It's just that given an option, I listen to other stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
That's kind of what it boils down to. I don't think I ever really considered myself I like pretty much every genre, or at least can appreciate it, right?
Yeah.
Like any genre, I'm like, oh, I get why people like this, right? I won't listen to it myself, but like I don't find it reprehensible.
Yeah.
Which I feel like a lot of people maybe would think that about a lot of metal subgenres, right?
Yeah, like especially, so what's funny is like I like to show people music, and I love my mom to death. And I'll be like, oh, check out this song. It doesn't have the screamy vocals you hate, right? So it's like, and what's really cool, the people I had on Sunday, God bless them, the Doppelganger from the Quad Cities, they're progressive metal, totally instrumental. No vocals.
Yeah. Like prog metal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's exactly what they are.
Yeah.
And I showed my mom their music, and they're like, wow, they're really good. And I showed them one song. They had a feature of like some deathcore vocalist, and she's like, you know? So it's almost funny that prog metal is a super niche genre, but for like those that don't like the screamy stuff or the growly stuff, maybe there's a taste for you.
Yeah, I think it also comes down to, I feel like a lot of people either have a leaning towards instrumental focused or vocal focused. I know a lot of people who are like, if they don't have good vocals, I kind of don't care, right? Like, they're very lyrics forward, very vocalist, hardcore, melodic forward. I'm very much more like instrumental. I like vocals and I like lyrics, and I appreciate that. But like the prog subgenres, metal or otherwise, are very much about technical ability, about how the instrumentation works, about how that's all structured in a song, which is very technical. It can be fun to listen to if you really like instrumentals, which I think not everyone does. So it's kind of a hard sell.
More people don't than do.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like it, and it's not even like a lamenting, right? It's not like, oh, how dare they not? It's just like, it's how
it's
people,
personal preference.
Some people just really like, I mean, like I appreciate rap music in a way that is like instrumental almost, right?
Yeah.
I appreciate how they're able to kind of really tie together the rhythmic nature of their voices in a way that's very, just how rhythmic rap can be. Lyrics themselves, I kind of don't care as much about, like the wording and
I agree.
The quote unquote poetry behind it. Poetry isn't the best word for it, but
the storytelling or however.
Like I can appreciate it, but I very much,
it's not what you focus on.
The technical pieces of how you construct a song, regardless of the instrument, whether it's voices or an actual instrument, right? So it's one of those things that's why I think I appreciate most genres, is because they always have some level of musicality to them, even if it's maybe a bit lame or a bit rote, I guess, to use a highbrow term.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page with that. Like, vocals are nice, but to me, they're just another layer of instruments plus rhythm. Like for rap, it's more adding another layer of rhythm to a beat. For deathcore, to me, that's just, some of these guys sound like you put a pig in a life-size blender and you churn it up, and that's the sound you get. Like, it's disgusting. Well, to me, I love it. Just because it's like, I can't do that.
From a performance perspective, technical achievement award. Extreme. Okay, I'm looking up deathcore. Is deathcore your bread and butter?
That's
my
what you
bread
go
and
there.
Butter. I'm reading Wikipedia.
Wikipedia is the one all say all.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they can't be wrong. I mean, they have 5 citations on the first sentence. So
you want me to show you a quick little thing I can cut out here and not get YouTube band on?
Yeah, sure. Send it, brother.
Okay, so that's hardcore.
Yeah, I was gonna say my first thought was like, oh, do you do like hardcore metal?
So this band I found, Paleface Swiss. I'm gonna have to cut this little blurb out, but we're about to listen to some Paleface Swiss here. Trap, rap,
Ish.
Yeah. But then I'd say my favorite rapper is probably Kendrick Lamar.
Hard to go wrong.
Yeah. I really like Kendrick. I don't know, just his voice. Plus, he does really interesting instrumentals with his music.
Sure. I haven't listened to much of it. It's one of those things where like I don't seek out a lot of genres that I don't listen to. Like I feel like I probably should listen to more like Kendrick, more X number of rappers in that space, right? I just don't because, well, at least the more popular people, I just don't listen to radio or any sort of place
I don't either. Just the guy I had on Sunday, the prog metal guy, he's like, "Oh, dude, I love Kendrick." I'm like,
"Oh yeah,
I gotta see what the fuss is about." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Someone that I look up to says they like so and so. I'm like, I'll give them a swing for their money.
I mean, that's the thing is like with some artists, it's just like if they're good, it doesn't matter what their genre is. You can tell that like they know what they want to do, right? They have a confidence in their artistry, in how they want to convey whatever they want to convey, and they're able to do it in an interesting way that isn't very formulaic, I guess, for lack of a better word. Because like even formulaic stuff, like honestly, Taylor Swift's pretty good. Like she makes good music. Like is it mass market? Yeah. Is it mass market? Yeah.
Oh,
is it you know the most technically interesting stuff ever made? Like is it deathcore? No, because like it's aiming for a completely different thing. But in terms of the artistry of what she's trying to do and the kind of music she's trying to make, it's not like it's bad.
Right. And she is probably one of the best at what she does.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing that I try to really say when it comes to like music discussion is like there's very few people I would say make bad music in terms of like, I guess objective is a bad word, but objective in terms of like the kind of art they're producing. Like art is art, and it's very obvious when people are doing something interesting and something good. And I think a lot of people tend to get a little bit tribal in music.
Especially
in
the
music
metal
discussion, in any scene. There's a lot of people who are like, I mean, I know someone who's very much into dubstep and hates Skrillex because he ruined dubstep. like he ruined, quote unquote, ruined the like view of dubstep and like the greater cultural consciousness of dubstep. But like at the end of the day, it's very much like I think hating particular artists for their music, you can hate them for their shitty views. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. You know, like if they made not naming any names, if they made shitty 9/11 songs and racist tirade songs and may have died recently, you know what? You can hate them. I'm fine with that. I'm okay with that. But it's like just saying, oh, you listen to shitty music. I don't know. Like it's very, to me, it just feels a bit close-minded, I guess.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term, I guess.
Yeah, and that's just people saying, oh, you have to agree with me and you can't have your own opinion, which I think is kind of bullshit. You know, it's like people are raised on different things. Like I was raised on 80s hair metal, like Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue, Poison, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. But I was also raised on Guitar Hero. So to me, I feel like that's why I like metal, because I am a very competitive person.
I would rock band expert mode on any instrument any day of the week. Let me tell you. Like I get it. Like that's 90% of the baseline of my musical knowledge comes from Guitar Hero / Rock Band. All right. Like I get it. Oh yeah. But
you have rhythm down.
I just branched out from there, and I think it's one of those things where like you get, I feel like judging anyone for their music taste is just, you know what? It's cringe, you know?
It's cringy, man. Stop.
To use a term that the youth use, it's cringe.
It's cringe.
There's probably a more youthful term I could use.
It's
I'm too old.
It's not Fire. How about that?
Fire is even older, I feel.
Is it really? 20, I think 2014 was that when it really 2013 2014 made its debut into youth slang.
Who? Do you just mean the term?
The term.
Okay, I thought you mentioned a person. Okay. Gosh, maybe. I don't know. That was me. I graduated high school in 2014. Maybe. I don't know.
So you're 4 years older than me.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm on the edge of Zoomerdom. I'm like, I straddle the line between Zoomer and millennial. So I'm like, I got fingers in each pie.
Nice.
But I don't use TikTok, so that makes it an issue because I can't.
You can't be a Zoomer without TikTok.
I only get the flow from TikTok to Twitter. Excuse me, X. I don't think I've ever called it X naturally.
I haven't either.
I don't think anyone has actually. That's not Elon Musk. No, but like Twitter, I get the TikTok fall off from onto Twitter, and so whatever shows up on Twitter, I'll probably see. But anything that's not, I don't know. I don't know what's going on over there. So there's some stuff I'm not hip. You know what?
TikTok's bad.
I'm approaching 30. I just gotta accept. You know, at a certain point, you just gotta accept.
I'm pretty sure when I'll be your age, in 4 years, I'm gonna be like, I can't keep up with whatever's the next TikTok or whatever.
I gotta say, hearing you say when I'm your age, when you're only 4 years younger than me, it feels weird. I don't know.
I guess in 4 years, when
it makes me feel a certain way. I'll just say that.
It's a good way, bad way.
No comment.
No, like. I don't know. It feels weird that TikTok is almost oriented, and it's sad to say this. Even YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels, it's all oriented to exploiting the dopamine addiction economy. And it's like, oh, what's the most entertaining content we can make with it? And honestly, it probably started with Vine.
Yeah.
Quick 7-second videos, but people ate that shit up like it was a free market, and we're at a candy store, right? And Vine at the time was awesome. That was like one of the most sought after entertainment things. Like I
didn't use it, but I understand it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, what was funny is one of my teachers in high school had his kids blow up on there, and they're like 3 or 4. So they're in a wrestling match against one another. And the ref says, all right, go. And one of the brothers just like kicks the other brother in the nuts. And it went viral. It's like, if that's not the most brother thing ever, then I don't know what is.
Yeah. Yeah. It is what it is. I'm okay with just not any new social media. I just explicitly don't sign up for it at this point. I'm writing out the stuff I'm already on. Yeah. I'm already there. I'm not gonna move to Blue Sky or whatever. Like, who cares?
Is that a thing?
I mean, yeah. It's the not Twitter that Jack Dorsey, the original founder of Twitter. Yeah. It's the thing he made, and Blue Sky is like the one that's seemingly survived the various competitors, because I think Threads is pretty much dead. I don't know. I don't hear about Threads ever.
I don't either. I know some.
But like, why would you willingly sign up for another Twitter account? I guess is my question. Like, we already know Twitter is bad. Why would you make another Twitter? Yeah. I don't know. Like, either do a different thing or just not do anything. So like, that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, I'll write out Twitter until Elon Musk buries it, but before then, I don't know. I'm not going to go to a different Twitter that's not Twitter, but basically Twitter. Like, why bother? Like, it's just going to make me mad.
I love Twitter, dude. I will say for one reason.
Okay.
I got into Dogecoin at 2 cents.
Oh, God. Okay.
And I was really dumb with it. Then the day I got in, put in $1,000. So what was really cool is I actually got into Tesla a little late into their blow up stock price.
Yeah.
Put in 500, went up to $1,000. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That was across 3 months, 100% 3 months. That's really good.
Yeah.
But at the time, pretty much everything was doing that. I'm like, okay, we're kind of stagnating for 2, 3, 4 weeks here. Granted, in a normal stock market, that's what happens, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, fuck it. I made $500. I might as well just go balls deep into Dogecoin, right? I did, and that night it went up to like 3,800. I'm like, oh. And I let it sit overnight. It went back down to like 1,700. I'm like, I pulled it, and I tried to get back in, try to get back out.
No.
Terrible idea.
Don't get me started on crypto. Cryptocurrency is such a fucking racket. I don't know, and I know we talk about it from like a retrospective perspective.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Yeah, shoulda,
like,
coulda, woulda.
Yeah, like obviously it's all garbage now because we know it's bad. But like, even still,
let me pick your brain here. Why do you think it's bad?
Oh god, because like, well, okay. As an investment vehicle, it's speculative and garbage. It has no, like, just do stock market like everyone else, right? But and it's really the entire structure of cryptocurrency is based off of bag holders of like, hey, let's all pump this, so then the people who buy in late now are buying me when I'm selling it, so that they are left with a useless pile of cryptocurrency and I get money. Plus, as an actual currency, it's functionally useless. Like, it's like, why no one on planet Earth is using cryptocurrency to buy anything.
Depends on the crypto. Mostly Bitcoin is like the only applicable.
Even then, like, there were people who were putting up stickers saying, hey, the shop accepts Bitcoin, when they don't. Everyone who said, hey, we support Bitcoin, cut off support in like 6 months because they're like, no one fucking uses this. Why? And not to mention, there's like gas fees. There's all this other bull crap around actually transacting with it that makes it completely pointless. Plus the fact that fraud is rampant.
Oh,
like,
extremely.
There's no way you can't have private, like, the idea of not having a private transaction history, like it's public transaction history, is also ridiculous. Like, it's a glorified ledger. Like, yes. What are you buying from a blockchain of this stuff? Where like, what are you getting other than crypto tech bro nonsense? Like, it doesn't actually get you anything. It's just a bunch of speculative bullshit. You got me started.
Yeah,
you got me started.
I love it. This is good podcast content.
Ugh, and don't NFTs. Oh, they wanted to put medical records in NFTs. Can you imagine?
HIPAA would have had an absolute heyday with that.
Yeah, let's make medical records public knowledge on the blockchain. Are you kidding me?
Even, do you know what steganography is? Mm-hmm. Even with steganography applied to these NFTs with medical data, HIPAA would be it's and there's so many other things like that, like driver's license, anything government related. Like, all of that was bullshit. And there's no fraud protection because all of it's immutable blockchain. So if something bad happens, you can't revert it without completely forking the fucking blockchain, which Ethereum did like once at least. Because something happened, and then they're like, well, no, we don't want that to happen, so let's make another one. It's like, any bank on planet Earth would give you your money back if you accidentally did something, because there's no... All bank fraud, all money fraud isn't like someone man-in-the-middling your transactions, which is what blockchain tries to prevent, right? It's like trying to prevent like a weird like man-in-the-middle attack. Almost all fraud is like, you are doing something that you're approved to do, but in a fraudulent way. You are giving someone that you think is someone else. You are giving the Nigerian prince $4 million legally and ethically, or not ethically, thinking that they're a real person, but they're not. Blockchain doesn't do anything to help you. It's just like, you pass the money along, suck it up. Like, there's no thing where any reasonable bank, credit card, whatever would say like, oh, you were frauded, you were whatever. They, you're insured to X amount of money. Like, I don't know. It's just all a racket, and it kind of all has bared out to kind of be that. And it's like any angle you want to look at crypto as a whole just kind of becomes a big mess of nonsense that you shouldn't really engage with if you're not willing to lose all of your money, I guess is Yeah.
So if you like gambling, then go for it, I guess, if you want. I don't know.
CSGO cases got me hooked, dude. Dude, I'm not even kidding to you. My sophomore year of high school, I opened up a bayonet lore factory new off of $5. I put in $5, made in today's money that would have been $1,500.
Ooh,
which is insane. Woo. That is a fat turnaround.
Oh yeah.
And so I will say, yeah, I have some crypto stuff. I don't know, maybe over my lifetime I put in like 6-7K. But if you look in the grand scheme of life, though, what's 6-7K? That's it's really nothing.
If you want to treat it as like a way to make money, I guess go for it. Like, yeah. I'm just saying
the applicable use case is very minimal.
The people who are enthusiasts who want to say this is the future, nah, it's not. It's just glorified stock trading that's even less predictable.
Yes,
like, it's pump and dump schemes. It's a bunch of weirdness. Like at this point, listen. Everyone's moved to AI. All right,
yeah.
Give it the time.
Give it the times, man. Start investing in AI.
We'll move on to the next tech bro catchphrase. All right, we're in AI now.
We're in AI. Move on. I don't know. So the reason why I like at least Bitcoin is there is a finite cap, and once that finite cap is reached, that's it. Code is immutable. That's what I like.
Yeah,
but I like the fact that COVID can't come along, and maybe this part will get cut from the podcast. I don't know. But the fucking government can't just be like, here's X amount of money. We're going to make your salary drop by the worth 20%.
Well, so here's the problem, right? That is a deflationary currency, which is almost always bad. You always want inflation.
Correct.
To simplify, you always want 2 to 3% inflation, which is what the Fed tries to target, which is, because deflation at all is bad. And inherently, Bitcoin having a cap makes it deflationary, which means as a currency, it's completely unusable which goes back to the whole thing. Like it's not cryptocurrency, right? It's not currency, quote unquote. It's just a thing you can use to make money. Like it's not practical to use as a thing that you can use to buy stuff. Where did you live in Iowa State? Like what dorm?
So I did 2 years of Scott Community College on the eastern side of Iowa.
Okay, sure.
I'm from the Quad Cities.
Gotcha.
That part's gonna be cut. So I did 2 years there, and then I did 3 years at Iowa State. My first half year, I did like half in person, half bet because it was like COVID and everything.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
So
okay,
yeah. So I didn't con them. I told them a truthful story, a sob story, but it was a truthful story. And so if you pull out your rental agreement, you are gonna be you're getting like 40% back. But I told them a story enough to the point where I got all my money back.
Really?
For the second semester.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I played them like a fiddle, but I'm happy they had heart.
Hey, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I graduated in 2018, so like I didn't even consider the whole COVID angle because by the time COVID happened, I was already working, and I was like, well, it sucks to be them.
You're like that
college
sucks.
work, but like I'm already out, brother. I'm done.
He's gone.
Yeah, I'm gone. I'm long gone.
But yeah, I was in Friley for the first semester.
Were you honors at all? No, or no.
In college?
No. Yeah, in college.
How do you tell honors in college? I don't. The answer is no. Then.
If that's your answer, then no. The answer is no. Honors was like a very specific program, and you could have like honors dorms, and that's what I was in because I went Iowa State all 4 years.
Yeah,
and I was in like an honors section of the dorm. I was in Harwood, which was I think, God, what was that building? I don't remember the building name. It was on the east side of campus. It was on
Maple, Willow.
No,
Large.
Between those, west of Maple, Willow, MWL, but like, by, God, what was it? I can't remember the building name. It's escaping me. It's like that cluster of buildings, like really old buildings. Yeah,
I don't know. My geography for Iowa State's terrible.
Okay, I'm looking it up. I can't.
You want to drive the pod for like 30 seconds while I go to the bathroom?
Yeah, sure.
Sweet.
All right, I'm looking up. I will not. I don't think you're in much danger of that. So I went to, let's see here. I was in Harwood, which was an honors floor in... So honors is something you kind of opt into and they give you extra benefits and stuff, right? Like you can go to, specific honors floors that will only have honors students, so you can kind of stick with your clique and, be exclusionary to everyone else and have your own people. But yeah, Harwood was like the exclusive one, and it was in... They're not even telling me the building name. Oh gosh. It was Lion. That's what it was. Lion Hall. And that was like in a block of like really old buildings. So like we didn't have AC. We didn't have a lot of stuff. Well, we had AC, but only in one room. So like in the first couple months or like the first couple weeks of class, we were just like completely trapped in our one air conditioned room so that we wouldn't die of heat stroke. But yeah, it's Lion Hall, which was by a lot of other buildings. I think Barton is another one.
Barton sounds familiar.
Yeah, there's basically just like a little cluster of them because you have MWL, which is the big buildings.
Yep.
And then you have like center of campus, which is where like the business building is.
Yeah.
And like that river that kind of goes through. We were on like the really old buildings up on the hill up there. And that's where I was. So long story short, I was just curious about but like if you were in other places prior to that, then that makes sense. So
yeah. So I went to that other college for 2 years. Then I moved out of the dorms, did second semester, first year at home, which was sick. I was just day trading in class. It was bad.
Oh, you're one of them.
Yeah, and then I got banned because I didn't have you have to have like 10,000 minimum you're day trading with to not get limited to what you can do, which is absolute bullshit, but whatever.
Well, like 10,000 is like that limit of like taxation or whatever, right?
No, you still get taxed. They still sent me my tax forms.
Oh. Well, I just know like it's like, income and broad strokes income is like, below 10,000 you don't really get taxed at all. Like they just refund you what you paid if you paid anything.
Yeah.
But, okay.
I just want to be rich, man. Like that's all I want in life.
I'm over it.
You just go to work.
Nah, I'm good.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, it's money isn't everything, but it buys everything.
It gets you. It doesn't buy happiness, but it gets you part of the way there.
Yeah,
it helps.
It certainly at least eases a lot of stress.
Not living paycheck to paycheck is pretty great. It's a good time. You definitely want to aim for that. I would say.
For the record, we do not live in places that would even think about being even close to $2,000 in rent for one person.
No shot.
Yeah, like
this ain't San Francisco.
Yeah,
or Vancouver.
We are not in a high density area at all.
But it's also not that cheap.
No, it's not. It's not less than like $1,000 for decently modest. Pretty. I don't know. What would you call this? Is this good? Great?
Yeah, I mean it's a new place. It's new. I would say it's relatively. I mean, it's small, but like not like New York City studio apartment small. It is like standard 1-bedroom small that I would expect. Yeah, and it's
The coolest thing is like a 10-foot deep walk-in closet in the bedroom. That's
I
really
have that,
nice.
and it has slowly become just like where I shove all of my storage. It is. It is not a closet. It is just a mini storage locker. At this point.
It is nice.
I have because I've lived in my current place for like 3 years at this point.
It's just transformed.
Yeah, like
it happens.
You don't move and you collect things, and then you realize by the next time you move that you shouldn't have bought anything. Really, owning things is a scam because you have to move at some point, and when you have to move it, that's when it becomes a nightmare. But
especially when you rent, and then they just keep jacking up the prices on you, and you're like, "Hey, man, can we just skip this year raising rent?
Like, can we not actually?
Can we just do 1 year? Just give me a pat on the back.
Take a year off. That would be nice.
Yeah. What really sucks is like, so this place, their website is offering it the same layout, for the same price I paid, but they're raising my rent. I'm like, fuck you guys. Like, come on. Like, what bullshit's that, dude?
Yeah.
But whatever. I don't care. What are we getting at here?
Where are we at? We're wrapping this up?
Hour 21.
We're wrapping it up here?
Yeah, let's wrap this up. So how I end these is given what you are good at with your life, whether it be job related or just your wisdom, life experiences, if you could give advice to yourself or someone who might be, let's say, still in college or fresh out of college, what advice would you give them to be successful in current day?
Current day. Oh, gosh. I mean, broadly, I would say, I think the biggest problem with high school, and I'll wrap around to the actual answer here. High school is a lot of like worrying about where you're at now and where you'll be in the future. And I think knowing what you're going to do is not knowing what you're going to do in your life is extremely normal and extremely expected. Like I lucked into at graduating high school to have a career path that I was generally confident in, which was computing, and thought I would be good at it, and I was successful at it, and I was able to thrive in that space. But vast majorities of people I know got degrees that didn't get them any jobs that they were looking for. They took subjects that they weren't really as interested in as that they thought they would be. And I think that that's a really good thing to know, is that like your life doesn't end when you graduate high school, when you graduate college, when you turn 30 even. Like life isn't like just some like map that you need to follow. You need to plan out and meticulously say, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I know I'm good at, or what I'm going to stick with for the rest of my life, because that's insane. No one should ever sign up for that. And I think the biggest thing that you need to be open to is just, hey, this thing isn't working for me, or recognizing when a thing isn't working for you and understanding that life isn't about just working a job for the next 40 years and then retiring. Like it's figuring out what makes you happy and what makes you tick, and realizing that that's not going to always come easily. I think that's the key. Cause like I've swapped roles even at a given job multiple times to figure out what I'm actually enjoying. And I think that it can be a little bit intimidating to try and really narrow in on that. And it feels very imposing to try and tackle that all at once. So yes, your life, high school isn't your life, college isn't your life. What you're doing after each of those isn't going to dictate who you will be for the next 40 to 60 years. It's just take it easy. Relax. You'll be okay. If you can pay your bills, you're probably okay. I guess is the core tenet of where I'm at. So yeah.
Gotcha. This has been Joe the Philosopher.
That's me.
We're going to cut there.